Hello and welcome back to another episode of Weekly Waypoint, a series where I talk about my week and the things that interest me. Today we are playing Unreal Tournament 1999. It's been a while. We do like to revisit this series every now and again and go one map further down the list. I don't actually think this was a very good map. I've never actually played it before, or at least I have no memory of playing it before. And it was a bit too windy, at least for an Instagib map. I think it was like, I put the max amount of bots allowed, 16 bots. I think that's the max. That's normally what I put in. And it recommended a player count of like 8 to 12 players, so it made me think that also like the bot density versus how big the map was also a little bit off, and therefore not quite as fun. I did actually half record a match in the previous map in the list before I realised what I'd already done that one. So I was like, oh, I guess we should do a different map. Also, last time we did an Unreal Tournament match, I did mention that my mouse had issues with the laser and sometimes kind of jolted around a bit, meaning it was a little bit difficult to play PC aiming games at the moment. I still have not got that fixed, so you're going to see some of that in this. We're in a cost of living crisis, my dudes. I can't afford to spend money just to improve my aim in a 23-year-old video game. Priorities. Anyway, this week, Dragonflight came out, didn't it? I could spend money on Dragonflight, that's nice. Actually, I pre-ordered Dragonflight, otherwise I probably wouldn't have got it. So how dem dragons fly? Well, they fly pretty well. The leveling experience was very fun. I do have a couple of negative things to say about it, but overall in terms of like World of Warcraft right now versus World of Warcraft in more recent times, it's brilliant. However, during this launch period, I did go back and read a bunch of stuff I wrote about Shadowlands when it first came out, and I was glowing about it. I said, this is going to be one of the all-time great expansions, and it was one of the all-time expansions. So I'm very dubious about praising Dragonflight too much, because it's an expansion that encompasses 2 years, if we are to go by historically how long an expansion lasts, and we have seen the first week of it so far. And there are people out there who find that take very annoying. They're like, well, can't you just be happy that World of Warcraft is good now? No, I can't. But yeah, the leveling experience is it's bloody fantastic. The one slow point I would point out is Anaran Plains, where you meet the centaurs. It just felt a little bit generic to me, a little bit fetch questy. I mean, it's all fetch questy, it's World of Warcraft, right? But it felt a little like, everything I didn't like about Battle for Azeroth, where it was like a terrestrial expansion and we'd gone from fighting gods to like killing quillboars for farmers, and it was just a sudden scaling back, and it just felt pointless, and like no meaningful story was being told. I'm not saying it's quite that bad with the centaurs. It was like a new faction that we've not really spent much time with. We've seen them as enemies in a vanilla zone, that's about it, and it was fun to see their way of life and their culture and everything, but it did feel like it was a detraction from the main story of Dragonflight that didn't really feed back into it in a meaningful way. Oh, and I should mention I'm not going to be giving away any story spoilers here, don't worry, but I really liked the first zone, the Waking Shore, right? Right. The music there in particular is beautiful. It's very Breath of the Wild meets Monster Hunter meets a couple of those early Jak and Daxter tracks. Like, it's just pleasant and nice. It's the kind of soundtrack we haven't really had in the game before. I mention it in my Adventures in Dragonflight video, which will be coming out soon, but it's like in Battle for Azeroth, compare like the ambience of like for regular zones where it's like I mean, okay, that's Borealis, but it's got kind of like a jaunty theme going on. If not the entire time, it felt like the entire time. Whereas in Dragonflight, it feels more atmospheric, more like something you'd find in a proper RPG, and it really benefited from that, in my opinion. One criticism I do have so far: everyone's talking about how much they have to do at endgame, and sure, there's stuff to do. There's reputation grinds, there's dragon glyphs to go collect, but it says on the map, oh, raise your renown to continue the campaign, and it means like the story, the end game story of Dragonflight, right? Except I've been looking around online, and it seems like people who are pretty much maxing out their renown, which is insane by the way that they've done that already. It seems like people who have done that still haven't unlocked any new weekly quests, so it seems like it is just time gated like it was last expansion, which is fine. But don't lie about it being time gated, what the heck? And it leads me to this weird kind of point where I'm like, maybe this is just because we don't have any borrowed power systems this time around, which is actually a good thing overall, but it's led me to this point where I'm like, I feel like I'm missing something. I feel a little directionless, and obviously, like, you know, I've got gear to go and collect from world quests and dungeons and stuff, and it's the way it used to be back in Mists of Pandaria, assumedly, but I'm so used to this other way of doing things that now I'm just like, wait, am I... why am I logging in again? And I'm not sure how I feel about that. As for the actual dragon riding, it's brilliant. It's bloody fantastic. It really changes your moment-to-moment gameplay between quests. It's fun to fly around. There are some frustrating points with it. It's not all butt farts and roses. There are moments where, like, you've got like you're trying to get from A to B, and because the game's like, hey, you've got a dragon to fly, the game's like, well, go fly your dragon there, we're not going to make it too easy for you. But unfortunately sometimes, like, you run out of stamina, you mess up, and then you've just got to kind of wait until you get more stamina back, vigor back, so that you can continue going to your location. And while, you know, it's not game ruining how often it happens, it does happen more often than creators would have maybe led us to believe, or at least maybe even it did in the beta. Maybe they tuned it down or something since then. But there have been a lot of times when, like, trying to collect a dragon glyph, you kind of brute force it by, like, flapping up a side of a cliff and then waiting for your vigor to recharge so you can flap again. And I'm just not sure it all comes together quite as good as people were saying, but it is a really fun system. I'm really glad it's in. It's a brilliant middle ground between, like, the previous flying in the game, which is just like kind of like god mode flying around, versus not being able to fly until a few patches into an expansion. I think it is ultimately a success, and it's really fun and it's great. But also the dragon customizations aren't really grabbing me the way Legion artifact customizations did, and I think it's supposed to be kind of like an analog to that, of like, oh, if you go and complete this content you can get this, but like most of the customizations are so small that, like, when you're flying around, just by the nature of how the game is played, you're not really looking at the features on your dragon. The main things you're going to notice about your dragon is the model, or I guess the skeleton, I should say, and the colour. And you can only unlock different colour variations on your dragons by I think finishing renown tracks. I might be wrong on that, but getting a certain way through renown tracks anyway, which means that everyone is kind of on the same 4 dragons, and that's not as much variety as I would like. But I mean, if they continue to expand on this system going forwards, that criticism is going to fall by the wayside pretty damn quickly. I've been pretty heavy on the criticisms here, but that's mostly just because I'm very aware that last time when Shadowlands came out I was raving about it, and then very quickly there wasn't much to rave about, so I'm trying to be a little bit more level-headed this time around. But don't let that detract from the fact that Dragonflight, so far, in its first week, has been an amazing expansion, and I'm very glad it exists. When I started questing after the slightly botched launch, when I got into, like, the Waking Shores, I was like, oh, as I started questing, I was like, this is the good stuff. I forgot what the good stuff was like, but this is it. I'm liking this. And the theme of, like, dragons and stuff is quite fun too. It's better than, again, I've mentioned before how I don't like quote-unquote terrestrial expansions like Battle for Azeroth. I'm starting to think I just didn't like Battle for Azeroth because this is hitting the right notes for me. It feels very Warcraft, and I think something that is really cool about the way they've done the lore is the dragons have always been a part of the lore, but they've never been central. But like the way the lore builds out what dragons do in this world and why they exist and what part they play, it feels like it's lore that's been there all along, but also it feels like it's like changing the focus on the power dynamics of the world in a way. I don't know if that's the right way to say that. I don't really know what I'm saying. I just know that it feels good. Also, not to spend too much longer on games because I want to talk about something else as well, but Fortnite Chapter 4 came out the other day, and it's really bloody good. The battle pass seems pretty cool. It's got Doom Guy in it. You get the Witcher as a free skin later on, so that's exciting. Sorry, Geralt, I should say. The Witcher, as if I've never played the game. I haven't played that much of a game. It was on sale for £6 on Xbox, and I'm really bummed out I didn't pick it up, because one of the reasons I haven't played a lot of it is because it doesn't run well on my PC. But yeah, it feels like an overhaul to just like how Fortnite is. It feels like, I would say it feels like Fortnite 2.0, but it's 4.0, right? It's just because I only really started playing properly in chapter 3 even. So yeah, it's very fun. I recommend checking it out. They've made like so many little improvements, like mantling and like gun feel and like how damage numbers are shown and stuff like that. It just feels like a new iteration of a game. It's good stuff. One last thing I wanted to talk about before we went is mental health. That's right, we're taking a trip down Reality Avenue. Please stick with. I don't recall if I've really mentioned much of this on the weekly Waypoint before. I've definitely mentioned it in other places, but I mentioned somewhere that I had an appointment today about the old anxiety and ADHD, the two suspicions I have about what's wrong in my noggin. And it's not like I'm cured or they've diagnosed me and everything's great, but I mean they've sent me somewhere for one, and they've told me to come back with more information from like a survey they've given me for another. So stuff is underway. The brain is under maintenance, everyone. Isn't that fun? And if this sounds like oversharing to you, that would be because people don't talk about this stuff enough, and I thought I would share my hashtag mental health journey. No, because there's so many unknowns, right? Like I hear about like, oh, I needed help and it took me months to get it. I've only heard negative things about this stuff, and that kind of feeds into like, if you do have anxiety, which it's very much looking like I do, or well, I guess generalized anxiety disorder or some other form of like official anxiety problems, then that feeds into excuses of like, well, I don't want to see anyone because nothing's going to get done about it. But no, it's good to see people and you should do that, and I will continue to share how I get on with it. Funnily enough, I was going to sleep the other night and this appointment was hanging on my mind, and do you remember last week when I mentioned how I discovered the animator ice cream sandwich? He put out a video about how he discovered he had ADHD, and he listed off a bunch of traits. I was like, fuck, that's totally me. I have all those traits. But I mean, I have not actually been diagnosed yet. That's going to be sorted out in a few weeks, or at least I'm going back with more information in a few weeks. So yeah, this stuff does move slowly, but if you don't start now, it's going to take even longer. I'm looking into the microphone like you can see me giving you a look. If you think you have something wrong in that old brain noggin can of yours, please see someone about it. Even if it's not like life-threatening for you, it's still like, for me, it's like I'm not exactly moving anywhere with my life because of these issues, so probably shouldn't let it linger, because this human body of ours, it doesn't stick around forever, unfortunately. It is a perishable good, and one day I'll be dust. One day I'll be dust. I want to get some stuff done before I'm dust, so I should probably get the brain stuff sorted, shouldn't I? But from what I know, doctors say trust your instincts. If you think something's wrong, talk to them. The worst they can do is say it doesn't appear like anything's wrong with you. They're not going to laugh you out of a building, but chances are, if you think something's wrong, then you know your brain better than anyone. Something's probably wrong. I always say that I'm like, well, I don't say like I'm a mental health advocate with big capital letters in front of them. I'm not one of those people, but I always tell people to look after their mental health. So it's about time I took a leaf out of my own book so that I can actually put some weight behind my words, and also have some experience to talk from. That'd be good, wouldn't it? But yes, the weekly Waypoint is somewhere where I will keep you updated. Did they laugh me out of a building with my ADHD claims? We'll find out. As I've just mentioned, they will not be laughing. But I'm a little confused, because they did give me 2 surveys to complete. One was about how I cope with stuff in my adult life, and one with how I cope with stuff as a kid. And obviously ADHD, very famously diagnosed usually in childhood, and if it's missed, I've read somewhere that it's quite hard to get a diagnosis, which is something that has me slightly concerned, because in the adult questionnaire I was like, oh, tick, 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 right? Like, this is, yeah, I'm acing this. I've got this shit, baby. And then I looked at the childhood stuff and I was like, well, I was quite a normal kid, apart from being a little antisocial, and I mean that in the I'm not making lots of friends way, not the I'm going out and getting an Asbo way. So I've got some questions about that, but again, I'll keep you updated when I know more. Thank you all very much for tuning into this episode of the Weekly Waypoint. I hope everyone is, if you celebrate Christmas, getting in the Christmassy mood, the Christmassy spirit. It can be a boon for mental health in the holidays. I'm wearing a Christmas jumper right now. I started wearing it because I had to wear a jumper on top of it because it was very cold on the way up to the doctor's this morning, but I'm still wearing it because it makes me feel Christmassy. Oh, I have a week off this week as well, so hopefully, I don't want to say hopefully I'll have time to make more videos because I think I need to chill this week, but who knows what's going to happen. Maybe I'll do some streams. maybe I'll break all my own rules and just work myself into the ground. Thank you very much for watching. I will see you next week.